In April of 2020, the United States Air Force Expeditionary Center was faced with a challenge that had never been seen before: how to continue to train airmen in the midst of a global pandemic.
So initially when that training tasker came down that we were going to have to continue, we had to basically relook at every single JQS, every single advanced deployment requirement for theater entry, and basically see how it fits into the mold of the training that we do now.
One of those ways was to initiate a mandatory 14-day quarantine for students arriving at Joint Base McGuire-Dix Lakehurst.
With COVID, we had to build this whole new process of how we get our students in here, how we get them bed down in quarantine. So when they show up to the 68 Gate Visitor Center, we ask them medical screening questions. They fill out their student information sheets, has their GTC numbers on it, they pick their meals for the 2 weeks while they're in quarantine. Once they're finished with that, we get them on a bus and we bus them over to All American Inn, where they finish in processing there and they're escorted to their rooms.
So a typical day for us is we start at about 0700 and immediately start delivering everyone's meals. We'll drop it off at everyone's rooms. And then from there, we have a little bit of a lull. After that, it's lunchtime, so we'll deliver lunch and dinner together. And then depending on how many people, we have 2 or 3 PT chalk times in the afternoon, and then we get them back in their rooms.
Throughout this process, the safety of both students and instructors was at the forefront of everyone's minds.
So with COVID, we have to follow social distancing in our vehicles. So you have a 44-passenger bus that we're putting a max of 11 students on at a time for quarantine. Bags are in one seat, they're sitting across from it, and then it's staggered back and forth. Researching what you could use Lysol on, what you could use Cabicide on, without damaging vehicle surfaces, different equipment surfaces, and that kind of thing. Those were kind of the biggest challenges. Were we able to sanitize everything the way that we needed to be?
After their 14-day quarantine, students are cleared to continue training. Members of the EC transport the students from quarantine to their new quarters.
We send out a chalk time for them so that everyone knows when they should show up. We'll have them get on the bus, get them to pack their stuff. We only do 11 people at a time because it allows for a decent amount of social distancing on the bus. We'll do as many chalks as it takes to get everyone out of here. And then once they go in process, they're typically free until about 1300.
Executing the mission can't be done alone. It takes support from unit leadership and cooperation from the base services as well.
The entire world is going through a pandemic that nobody has been through before, and the unit literally in a week and a half built quarantine plans, built reception plans to bring all of these students in, be able to answer as many questions as possible, and then be able to shift when we needed to. Hey, this didn't work, let's try this the next time. And just being able to adjust on the fly with everything that we have done to change our mission, to take care of these students and support them while they're in quarantine, and then get them through the courses.
Think about what a shirt does and times that by 50, and that's what he was dealing with. I can't even imagine the sleepless nights that he had.
The Joint Base has been definitely helpful on a lot of the aspects that we needed for not only executing our training, but making sure our students had those 14-day quarantine measures in place. I would just like to highlight, honestly, the men and women of the 421st Combat Training Squadron. There's a lot of planning that needed to happen to make sure all this stuff worked. I don't think anybody could have predicted that this was going to happen. So the fact that we were able to continue training and train, I believe we're up to close to 2,000 students since the pandemic has happened, is a feat in and of itself.
This has been Master Sergeant Ashley Hyatt reporting from the U.S. Air Force Expeditionary Center Public Affairs Office.